Clearly, the evidence heard in the Set the Standard report about some of the things that happened here in the heart of democracy is something that should be a source of national shame. And I really thank the government for the way that they have taken this seriously. I want to acknowledge Senator Gallagher and the Parliamentary Leadership Task Force for their work, Senators Davey, Hume, Farrell and Waters in this chamber, Ms Stegall, Ms Claydon and Ms Lay in the other place, for their consultation and landing on a place where we will have a way to deal with the sorts of things that we can all agree are totally unacceptable. We should be setting the standard here. We should be the safest, most respectful workplace in the country, and that an independent commission is required to lift and enforce appropriate behaviour in this place is a very sobering thought. And I think we should all be reflecting on that, about the individual role we could play in ensuring that there's not a lot of work for this independent commission going forward. There are, however, a few key places where I think the bill falls short, and especially when it comes to transparency. And I note that this has been well canvassed in the other place. I'll be supporting a range of amendments that seek to remedy these shortcomings that were also flagged by crossbench colleagues in the lower house, as well as moving my own that seeks to reverse a last-minute deal done between the government and the opposition regarding membership of the joint committee. Fortunately, the member for Indi, Dr Helen Haynes, was in the chamber when this came up and brought it to the attention of the parliament, a parliament that today is split roughly into thirds, the duopoly of Labor and the Coalition, changed by an influx of community independents, a growing crossbench. I believe the committee should reflect this new reality, and it should be for the parliament to decide who fills the deputy chair position. The bill also departs from Set the Standard's recommendations in a number of key aspects, and this was highlighted by the member for North Sydney in the House in her second reading amendment, and the member for Bass, Andrew Wilkie, in a substantive amendment, which we've just voted on. Senator Waters moved, and the major parties have voted against. The bill doesn't guarantee that findings of parliamentarian misconduct will be made public. I think this is a serious shortcoming that needs to be remedied, and it's incredibly disappointing. After everything that we learned from the passage of the NAC, where again we saw the major parties team up to say, yep, we'll have a NAC, but we'll make it secret. And I argue, and many argued at the time, and I think history is starting to prove that when you have something that is totally secret, you undermine public confidence in something that needs trust, that people should be able to look to and say, yes, they're in there, they're doing their job. And what do we have? Labor and the Libs say, yeah, we'll set this up, but let's make it secret. And just as we've seen with the NAC now, with people saying, well, what's going on? With the robo-debt lack of action, people asking questions because we just don't know. It's incredibly disappointing to see this. And whilst the bill makes the Privileges Committee the ultimate arbiter, the Commission should be able to make recommendations to it. And I think, to go back to the amendment that was just voted on, there should be a public explanation for any difference between the recommendations of the Commission, which is why we're setting it up, to have an independent body to look at things, make recommendations, and if the Privileges Committee decides something otherwise, there should be an explanation. It shouldn't just be a black box where you don't actually know what's happening in there. And just finally, the final issue I wanted to touch on is the scope. Department of Parliamentary Service staff should be included in this. I have had multiple constituents come forward with deeply disturbing accounts of their treatment in this building. Just today there's an account in the Canberra Times from a former DPS employee who describes Parliament House as a toxic bin fire of a workplace. This needs to be addressed, and I thank Senator Thorpe for her amendments, which I'll be supporting, and which would allow the complainant of an open PWSS case of pre-code conduct to choose if they would like their case to be referred to the IPSC rather than it remaining with PWSS. This is clearly a critically important bill. It absolutely needs to pass. But, Minister, I'd like to ask, to my point about the secrecy, as we've seen with the NAC, why has the government agreed to deviate from recommendations and have no transparency over why recommendations may or may not be agreed by the Privileges Committee?